Associate Professor Walter Theseira.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in 1994, Professor William Kissick defined a set of 3 trade-offs that any healthcare system faces: cost, access, and quality. We all want a health system that is low cost, grants timely access to all who need care, and ensures that healthcare is high quality. But all 3 at once is impossible to achieve, so we need to choose between difficult trade-offs. We have, by international standards, solved the healthcare system problem better than most. In 2000, the World Health Organization ranked Singapore 6th in the world in overall health system performance. Because this ranking was so controversial, the United States ranked 37th behind all the Western European countries. The WHO has never updated the ranking since. But if you look at more up-to-date figures, we are still doing well. The most recent WHO World Health Statistics 2019 reported that Singaporeans enjoy a healthy life expectancy at birth of 76.2 years, the best in the world. We also have a correspondingly high total life expectancy at birth of 82.9 years. And our healthcare is delivered efficiently. Health expenditure as a percentage of GDP was 4.5%, in the bottom quartile of countries worldwide by expenditure. But there are still gaps. The CareShield Life and Long-Term Care Bill will create a universal, pre-funded long-term care insurance plan, at least for younger cohorts. Because CareShield Life is universal and will be supported by subsidies for low-income Singaporeans, I believe this will provide genuinely universal access to long-term care if we become severely disabled. A mandatory universal plan is particularly important because the likelihood that we will become severely disabled is quite high. As the ElderShield Review Committee report states, 1 in 2 Singaporeans aged 62 today could become severely disabled within their lifetime. So CareShield is not really an insurance scheme in the sense of protecting Singaporeans against a low-risk, high-cost event. It is really a pre-funding scheme for the care needs that are part and parcel of old age. The mandatory nature of CareShield Life will ensure that no Singaporean or their families will be in desperate want for financial assistance to cope with care needs in old age. Cost effectiveness and quality will also be important, but they will have to be addressed another day. I wish to examine how we propose to use the MediSave system to pre-fund CareShield Life and what the implications are for our broader healthcare financing system. Sir, at the risk of exaggeration, let me suggest the chief concern among many Singaporeans, if they were to get sick, is how they will manage their medical expenses. This is ironic, given our excellent health outcomes and our comprehensive medical financing system. Our top healthy life expectancy ranking worldwide is surely not a sign of a people who cannot afford quality health care. But it is not so difficult to understand once we appreciate that a fundamental policy lever we have used to manage the cost, access, and quality trade-off is to emphasize individual responsibility whenever possible. It appears that Singaporeans have internalized this policy principle of individual responsibility quite well. And individual responsibility has been made practical through our MediSave medical savings scheme, which gives Singaporeans a nest egg to spend on their future medical needs. Mr. Goh Chok Tong, then Second Minister for Health, said in the debate on the MediSave scheme in 1983, and I quote, "We must therefore save when we can, put a few dollars aside every month when we are working, save as an individual, save as a nation." This is the basic idea of MediSave, to provide funds to our citizens, to pay for their future health needs, for them to buy an umbrella when it rains and even before it rains. End quote. But MediSave has a policy objective that extends beyond pre-funding. If the policy problem was only pre-funding for future healthcare costs alone, it would not matter whether MediSave was collected as individual accounts or whether the government created an endowment fund for future healthcare spending. The policy objective of MediSave was also to encourage efficiency in healthcare utilization. Medisave achieved this by giving each Singaporean an individual financial stake in their healthcare decision-making. Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, in the book Lee Kuan Yew, Hard Truths to Keep Singapore Going, said of Medisave, and I quote, "My major objective in the early days was to make sure that nobody derails the idea of having individual accounts for CPF and Medisave. Whatever you earn, it's yours. It's yours, and if you don't use it, you can leave it to your children or your relatives or whoever you like. Why should you put it into a common pool and everybody draws out at your expense, which is what's happening in some Western countries? The system has collapsed." End quote. As in many other matters, Mr. Lee was prescient. I suspect many members dealing with appeals from constituents feel that the problem with individual accounts is holding the line against requests to use Medisave for all types of personal, medical, and other expenses. Since 1983, there have been dozens of parliamentary questions and cuts that appeal for the use of Medisave to be extended to many non-hospitalization healthcare expenses. For example, when Madam President was a member in this House, she filed cuts in the Budget 2006 debate to call for greater flexibility in the use of Medisave, particularly for long-term chronic illnesses. The government has generally held the line, although Medisave's scope has gradually been expanded. Now, in isolation, I think holding firm to the policy is admirable, provided that Singaporeans who appeal to access the Medisave funds are given other means of financial assistance. But if you were to read Mr. Lee's statement on Medisave carefully, you will see that the other problem with individual accounts is holding the line against the government itself. The risk is that policymakers will appropriate the funds in Medisave to finance healthcare expenditures on a universal basis, or indeed meet any other healthcare expenditure need. Sir, we have expended considerable effort to ensure that individuals cannot use their Medisave as they please because we want to protect them against the risk of exhausting their medical savings prematurely. Yet the same discipline that the population is expected to exercise in Medisave wisely, exercise in using Medisave wisely, must also apply to the policymaker. The policymaker has tended to increasingly to see the Medisave account as a convenient source of healthcare financing. And why should she not? As of the first quarter 2019, the CPF board reported that aggregate Medisave balances stood at $97 billion, or about $25,000 on average per CPF member's account. This is enough to fund the operating expenses of the Ministry of Health for about 10 years. What will be the impact of CareShield Life on our Medisave system? The illustration given in the ElderShield Review Committee report states that total estimated premiums paid from age 30 to 67 for a non-subsidized 30-year-old male policyholder will be about $11,300. Now, if you take this as a lump sum premium, this would amount to nearly half of aggregate Medisave balances currently existing. Of course, the plan is for CareShield Life to be funded over the decades through premium payments amounting to a few percentage points of a member's monthly Medisave contribution. But the total amount collected under CareShield Life and paid out will be staggering over the next few decades, just as the sums collected and paid out for MediShield Life have been. The problem I've outlined goes beyond just the creation of schemes such as MediShield Life and CareShield Life, which have greatly improved access to healthcare. The Medisave account has become a source of funds that the policymaker can use to adjust the balance of subsidies in healthcare financing. As average balances in Medisave increase, it will become more feasible to propose higher basic rates of coverage in MediShield Life and in CareShield Life with the accompanying higher premiums. Hospitalization and long-term care subsidies as well can be adjusted if Medisave balances are robust. The ElderShield Review Committee report states that the government today plans to subsidize about 60% of the cost of nursing home care for lower middle-income, severely disabled Singaporeans. But of course, this subsidy level could fall in the future if CareShield Life payouts become more generous. I think there is nothing sinister in this. It is just a matter of whether payment is taken through the Medisave pocket or the taxpayer pocket. But we may come to a point where we can reasonably ask, if the individual ownership of the Medisafe account remains a meaningful policy principle. Mr. Speaker, sir, a hallmark of this government is the willingness to solve problems pragmatically rather than ideologically. I respect this principle tremendously, but as we adapt our healthcare policies to address the challenges of an aging society, we should take a hard look at some of the ideological principles behind healthcare financing. I would urge that we examine carefully our assumption that individual responsibility through paying for Medisafe and cash actually reduces moral hazard, the excess consumption of healthcare. As a matter of health economics, this is an empirical and not a theoretical question. It is true in theory that when healthcare coverage is provided free at the point of treatment, there will be increased demand and overconsumption. But the extent and magnitude of these effects is not settled, and the policy question is often too narrowly framed as one of medical cost management only. An array of studies from healthcare insurance coverage experiments in the United States suggest that other social outcomes matter as well, such as financial and psychological stress and the early detection and management of chronic diseases. Second, I would urge that we also recognize that the Medisafe account must be protected from the policymaker, just as it must be protected from the account owner. The issue, I think, is not the misuse or abuse of Medisafe funds. I am quite sure that this government poses no such risk. The issue, rather, is the use of Medisafe to alter how healthcare financing is structured without a full and frank examination of how we should be balancing payments between pre-funding and current payments between the individual and the taxpayer. CareShield Life, while a great innovation that will substantially increase access to long-term care, has changed the structure of healthcare financing in Singapore. We should not let this policy decision pass unexamined. Mr. Speaker, I support the bill.